applied to is, but if I could take a guess, it would probably be in the maybe 12 to 15 range. So this is definitely something that a lot of students need to save for and budget for. And then you are able to submit your application actually by the end of May. So, you want to make sure that you've contacted individuals to write letters of recommendation, that you've been collecting information on your experiences, which we'll talk about. And then at the end of June, those applications begin to be processed, and you might receive secondary applications from medical schools, which are additional essay questions.
Yes. And in general, like the sooner the better with
Mhm.
these. It may say like that this is the first day that you could submit, but the closer you can get to submitting on that date, the better, just because that way schools can see your application sooner. Um, and you have a little bit more time to kind of think about what you want to write about in secondaries, that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like punctuality really sets the stage because that shows that you're committed, you're on top of things. And again, you want to make sure that you really do go through your application carefully. I'm guessing you, Molly, also probably printed it off, like checked for typos.
Yes.
Make sure that you go through that before, but really do try to be timely about it. So
Mhm.
here are the sections of the AMCAS application. And I don't know if we've said it, you guys probably know this, but that stands for American Medical College Application System. So this is the system that is used by nearly all MD schools in the United States, with the exception of some programs in Texas.
Hmm.
And Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine programs use a different application system,
Comas.
a COMAS,
Yeah.
yes. So,
The sections are almost the exact same if you're
okay, yeah.
applying also. I applied to allopathic and osteopathic schools. I didn't apply to Texas schools, but I think they're basically the same. So this says AMCAS, but it's nearly identical for ACOMAS and TMDSAS, which is the Texas one as well.
Yeah, so the parts that are in bold are the parts that we're really focusing in on this evening with you. But again, it's going to have personal information, your basic demographic information and background. It'll also give a spot to talk about if you are from, a military background, an underserved background, if you're a first generation college or medical student, where you went to high school, when you graduated, where you went to college, your academic history, including all of your coursework and your GPA and your science GPA. And then there is a work and activities section, which allows up to 15 entries for various things, which we will talk about. And then your letters of recommendation, the medical schools that you choose to apply to, and then the personal statement, and then lastly, standardized test scores. So really just the MCAT is what shows up. So no SAT, no ACT, nothing like that.
And I was gonna say too, some of these things, even though, actually a lot of these things, even though the AMCAS or TMDSAS or ACOMAS may not be open yet, you can start compiling the information. So you can make sure, for me, I took some college classes in high school, and you have to have it was like the course number, the number of credits, some of that kind of information for every single college class that you've gotten credit for. And so I had to go back and contact the universities that I had gone to in high school. And so if that's something that you're able to do now, and just get your transcript from those universities, so you have that information right off the bat, that can save you a lot of time, and mental effort. If you can kind of spread out that mental effort over the application cycle, the more of that, the better. So that's something that you could get started on now, even if you're going to be applying in the future, just making sure that you have that information up to date. Um, Same like we'll talk about in just a little bit, like the work and activities, and letters of rec. You can start thinking about like what are some of the most impactful things that you've done, activity wise, things that you'd want to talk about on your application. You can just kind of keep a running list of those. You don't have to limit it to 15, just keep a long list, and then you have experiences to pull from. The other thing is that you'll need the information of the people that, like if you did volunteering at a hospital, you'd need the hospital contact for that. So if you can start working on getting that information, that'll save you some time later down the line too. Letters of rec also, you can start thinking about who you'd want to write them, and just kind of store that away in your head.
Yeah, and that's super important because you are at the mercy of like the people who work for some of those schools that you've gone to, and they have a lot of requests that they're working on.
Very
So
true.
they're not able to turn things over necessarily within 24 hours. So, you've got a lot of things you need to ask for. And same with letters of recommendation.
Hmm.
Professors write letters for a lot of students, and they have several other commitments. So it's really respectful to them, and they are really going to be able to sit down and write you a high quality letter that is very personalized and tailored to you if you give them that opportunity and that time.
Definitely. Kirsten and I were kind of chuckling earlier because we just went through the application process for residency, and it actually looks very, very similar to
Yeah.
AMCAS. So we were thinking about letters of rec a lot this year, personal statements, work and activities. And so a lot of this is very fresh in our minds right now. And speaking as someone who just went through asking for letters of rec, do it on the early side. You don't want to be the person who's like sweating to make sure that your professor gets it in late at night. I heard some horror stories from classmates about that. So. Yeah, I think we can go to the next slide.
Okay, so work and activity section. So this is really highlighting those experiences that have really impacted who you are and have helped you grow as a professional, as a student, and as a future physician. So, like Molly said, it's never too early to start making a list. It can be in the form of a Microsoft Word document or table. It could be in an Excel sheet. It could be in a notebook. A couple of our classmates just have composition books where they use pen and paper and write down the dates of things that you have done and just maybe a sentence about what you did and how it impacted you. Um, the content of this section allows up to 15 entries, and you get to choose a category. So some of those can be clinical, so things like working as a tech in a hospital or an ICU unit. Um, let's see, working as like a person who does ultrasounds or phlebotomy. It could also be working as a medical assistant if you've done that, or it could be shadowing. There are a lot of different things that might count as clinical. Maybe you volunteered in a medical stand at a sports or an athletic event before. That's something that counts. Leadership. Have you served on the executive board like president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, liaison of a student organization at your university? Have you done any volunteering with any local groups? That could include things like the food pantry to maybe a church setting, anything of the sort. It's really important to keep track of those things. And again, they could be one time or they could be over a broad span of all of your years of college. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Molly.
Oh no, I was gonna say I included one that I even did my last year of high school. That was a cool shadowing experience. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't do mostly high school activities for sure, but if there's one that was really impactful, you could throw that in there too.
yeah, totally. And then out of those, you get three to talk about in more depth. So you get about like 1,325 characters to talk about why a particular experience was the most meaningful to you. So maybe you encountered a patient and you saw the way, medicine impacted them and their life. And you could speak to sort of the emotions and how you saw, compassion really exemplified in a person caring for this individual. Maybe it was an experience that didn't necessarily have a positive tilt. Maybe it actually had a negative tilt, and you want to be the catalyst for change in a particular profession. And also, your most meaningful don't have to be strictly medical. It could be something from a camp that you counseled at or a research experience.
For sure. Yeah. This is a very broad section, so use it to kind of highlight yourself as an individual. We're going to go through some examples here in just a minute of we'll go through actually a first draft of my activity section and kind of some of the things that I included personally. But your activity section should not look like my activity section. Everybody's an individual, and this is an area that you get to showcase that. Um, so, yes. Okay, yeah. So here's one example of I think this is one of the more impactful ones. So this is a little bit longer um, experience description, I believe. But you can kind of read through it. So this is peer mentor for undergraduate pre-med students. So this would be like someone, if I was going to put this on my activity list, being a catalyst mentor. So it says, as I stood in front of a group of eager pre-med students during our first mentorship session, I remembered my own journey, how intimidating the application process had felt without guidance. So you can see they have a good, personal experience that kind of draws the reader in, and connected with like the writer's own personal experience. This memory fueled my determination to create a supportive environment. So, like, what was your goal in doing the activity? Over the course of the year, I led weekly workshops on application strategies, facilitated mock interviews, and helped mentees craft compelling personal statements. So that's just a really brief description of what the writer did. I think I was reading back over mine earlier today from many years ago, it feels like. And I was just kind of, I remember writing it and thinking like, oh, I feel like I need to give like a more in-depth, um, detailed description of exactly what I did. And the reality is you don't. This is, you just kind of want to summarize it, give an idea of your responsibilities, but you don't need to get real granular about that. So I think like a one summary about like here, about a one sentence summary is probably about appropriate. Also, sorry if you hear noise in the background. My husband is cooking dinner. Um, so yeah, but about a one sentence summary is probably good for most activities. So the next paragraph, one of my mentees, a first generation college student, shared how she felt overwhelmed navigating the medical school application process. Together, we identified her unique experiences and translated them into a powerful narrative. Seeing her confidence grow and her acceptance letter arrive was deeply rewarding. Through this role, I honed my communication and leadership skills while making a tangible impact on the next generation of future physicians. So here again, it's a specific example, and it says how it impacted not just the person that you were helping, but you, and then how you think you grew. Um, and I think another great thing about this example is that if you think about it from the perspective of someone who's going to be interviewing an applicant, there's a lot that you could ask about from this. You get a good idea of what they did, but then you could ask about, so, you know, what specifically drew you to want to be a part of this program? Any other impactful experiences? Did you have to overcome any hardship with this? There's all kinds of good questions that you could ask based on this little experience descriptor. Okay, we're not going to get into personal statement quite yet. I am going to stop sharing and share my another screen that is a kind of my list of activities, and we can just go through those really briefly so you can kind of get an idea of which activities I put on there, and just like some different style things. I have like little notes of what I needed to edit from each of them too, so you can see those and see like what was good about what I wrote and what needed changing. So I will share this one. Okay. Sure. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit so we're not squinting. Okay, so these first ones, I actually don't have these first three, I believe, were the most meaningful. Or no, it wasn't the first three. These are not my most meaningful ones necessarily. I don't have that expanded section on here, so this is just the brief descriptors. But I ain't talked about volunteering in the emergency department. Here I kind of just give a brief example of things that I did. And then I talked about how it impacted me. And then the edit that I realized I needed to make to this one was I needed to make the last sentence more personal. So you don't want it to sound like it's something that just anybody could have done. You want to say how it impacted you, not just like that you checked a box and did it. How did it change you as a person? How did it make you potentially a better future physician? Okay, this is more volunteering, basically the same thing, outpatient surgery volunteering. I was a tutor for a class in college. So here I kind of talked just about a little bit about what I did, and I said I needed to add or clarify how this could help me in the future as a physician. So like making that connection um, again of like why is that important for as a medical student? Um, and then like Kirsten talked about if you're part of any like extracurricular clubs, those are awesome to include. So I have a couple of those. And then if you happen to do any college athletics, I think even if you did club athletics in college, or if you were super involved in intramurals, you could probably even include that. But I did cross country, and so I talked about that, and that was one of my most impactful experiences. So I wrote a little bit more about that later on. Um, and then I talked about a couple of really cool projects that I did, or I thought they were cool. I don't know, I was biased, in undergrad. So I just mentioned those. This is another athletics thing. It's an and then more athletics. And then here I get into shadowing. So I talk about different shadowing experiences. One of them was a more prolonged one with Dr. Campbell. Then I talked about Dr. Reed and Dr. Clark were both actually just 1 day shadowing experiences, but I thought they were impactful. So even if it's a short experience, if it's impactful, you can include it still. Um, and then research and study abroad were the last ones. So I think the main things that you want to think about with experiences are trying to get kind of a broad number of categories. You don't want it to be all shadowing. You don't want it to be all research. You want them to look at it and say, okay, this is someone who is relatively well-rounded. Here are their interests. Here are things that you know, give them joy, give them they feel were meaningful. And also things that they can ask questions about in interviews because you'll get quite a few questions about these, as I recall. Do you remember that? I,
Oh,
I feel
yeah,
like for sure they
definitely.
pulled from these. And before you interview, which I know is probably a long time down the road, but before you interview, make sure that you've kind of reviewed these and you're familiar with them. Because you don't want to get asked about, tell me, you wrote about your shadowing with Dr. Campbell, and then you go, oh, was that the dermatologist or was that the cardiologist? I can't remember. Um, okay, so we're gonna swap back to the other, but go ahead, Kirsten,
Yeah,
sorry.
I think exactly what you said about having the mix is really important because one, you learn different things from different types of experiences. And the other thing is, being a doctor encompasses a lot of those different things, volunteering, being in the clinic, working on scholarly activity. And again, like we talked about, like some of Molly's experiences were just a 1 day thing, and so were some of mine, but some of them were probably stretched out over at least 2 to 3 years in college.
Hmm.
And I think that it's important to see continuity and long-term commitment to things and even growth within a particular organization. So I would say also it's good to have some experiences that are maybe shorter, but also it's good to have maybe 2 or 3 things that you're kind of connected to more long-term. Even if that's just, doing something like once a month with a group over the course of a few years, I think that's also really important.
Definitely. And I think in all of this, and we'll talk about this with the personal statement too, but if your goal is to really just represent yourself honestly and well, you know what I mean, put your best foot forward, but also just be genuine. If you did something and it wasn't that impactful and you didn't really care about it and it's not something that you plan to learn from or really prioritize, but it was technically impressive, don't feel like you have to put it on there. Um, Medical schools want to look at these to get an idea of what kind of medical student you would be, what kind of physician you'll be down the line, what kind of physician you'll grow into being. And so just make sure that they're authentic things. I remember feeling like pressure to put like some like high impact things on there, or being like, I only have one research experience or whatever. But I didn't like research that much in undergrad, and I didn't do that much of it. So I didn't want to make it, I didn't want to inflate areas of my application that just weren't that important to me in undergrad, at least. Now I do research and love it. But yeah, and medical interviewers in medical schools are pretty good at sniffing out people who are kind of just trying to um I don't know, show off, I guess. And so just be yourself um, and relax and it'll be fine.
It's hard to find that balance of confidence, but also humility because they want to see that you care more about the patients than about yourself for sure. And it's okay to put things on there that are true. But I will say, like what you said, Molly, like horror story that I heard one time was someone, I don't even know who this person was. This was like someone knew someone, but put something about playing guitar on their medical school application and
I've
went for
heard
an
this one
interview.
too.
And they go to an in-person interview and the interviewer has a guitar in their office and they were like, "Oh, I love guitar. Like, play me a tune." And
I
this
saw it on your
person,
application.
yeah, and this person had never played guitar in their life. So that is an
Yeah.
automatic rejection.
Like if you've taken one guitar lesson in your life, don't say that like, oh, I love to play guitar. It helps me relax. I do it every evening to when I get home from work or whatever. So, which seems basic, but you'd be surprised how many people don't follow that advice. So, okay,
That's
so I
good. We just
think
want them out of the application pool anyways.
yeah,
Get them
there you
out.
go. You guys would never do that, I'm sure. But just important to mention. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the personal statements. So here, the prompt they give is use the space provided to explain why you want to go to medical school, which is obviously super broad. Um, there is a character limitation, and so which is like it's between 850 to 1,000 words, which kind of feels like a lot until you start writing, and then you realize that, I don't know, that's not that much to describe why you want to go to medical school often. Um, but there's kind of break it down. You guys are probably very familiar with this. To introduction, body, and conclusion. So we'll go over some examples of this, a couple of examples in a little bit, but just you want to start, classic, start with a compelling hook. Um, don't necessarily start with like you don't have to give your whole life story. You don't have to say, I was born on November 5th, 19, whatever. No. But like you'll see in the examples, you do want to have something that, if you can, that catches the reader's attention, makes them want to understand and read the rest of it to kind of find out, um, make them curious. Um, and it's often good to start with like an anecdote, an experience that you had, something like that. Okay, so then moving into the body. So this is kind of where you get to highlight some meaningful experiences that really helped guide, um, you towards medical school. So you can talk about, it says here like clinical exposure, research, or challenges. Um, I think more or less, if it's something that you could write, like put in one of the experiences, it's probably fair game to talk about in your personal statement. Um, some people do use more personal stories. Like, for example, my husband's one of his brothers had faced some health challenges. And so he talked about that a little bit and kind of how seeing how watching, like, as the older brother, how his younger brother was treated throughout the years really sparked his interest. I think he talked about um, uh initially having an interest like sparked in anatomy class and learning about like the heart or something. Anyway, so you can use some more personal stories like that too, if that is significant for your path to medical school. I think you'll get a little bit better idea of what I mean here when we go through the examples. But things that are important to demonstrate are growth, specific skills that you have learned, and yes, and values that you've gained. And then the last thing is conclusion. So this is just bringing it all home. This is where you kind of sum it all up in one glorious paragraph. How the experiences that you've talked about solidify your commitment, your readiness for medical school and for just a medical career. Talk about how the things that you have just talked about in those body paragraphs are going to affect your future practice of medicine and your future goals, what kind of physician you want to be. Not specialty wise. This is random, but I would avoid saying like, and I'm going to be a dermatologist, because you want to talk about it in much broader terms. Many, if not most people, change what kind of physician they want to be once they get into medical school. And so um, generally, like admittance committees prefer that you just kind of leave it as medicine as a whole. Um, yeah, and then just stay very focused in the conclusion. Um, let's see.
That's a really
Okay,
good point. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, obviously maybe you like shadowed a particular type of physician and you did really enjoy it. But it is one of those things where you go to medical school and you have 4 years, and there are a lot of factors that contribute to
for
different
sure.
medical specialties. So it is really good to keep it broad and to keep an open mind.
For sure. Okay, so we'll start with Danielle. She is one of our classmates, and hold on here just a second. Let's share this one. Why is it opening that?
Is it just because it's Microsoft Word?
It might
You
be.
need to
Hold on.
scroll over.
I am going to
There.
close this.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. Should work.
Oh, boom.
Lovely.
There we
Okay.
go.
So this is Danielle, who's one of our classmates. I think just had an incredible personal statement that she was willing to share with us. She's not here, but thank you, Danielle, for being willing to Let us look this over. I'll zoom in again so we're not squinting. Um, and so you can kind of see she has, I think, a really amazing hook. Answer was pronounced dead at 11:52 p.m. You read that and it makes you go, "What?" Like, I want to know what's happening next. I have to at least read the next paragraph to get an idea for what's going on. Um, so then she kind of walks through specifically, a brief summary of what happened and how it affected her. She says, the traumatic loss made me realize for the first time how the lack of resources in a healthcare system could result in preventable deaths. The catastrophic impact of healthcare disparities in resource-limited communities fueled my desire to work toward change. Which I think is a really beautiful summary. It kind of talks about what happened, how it affected her, and it also kind of tells you gives you an idea of what kind of change does she want to make down the line as a physician. She's going to be an anesthesiologist, so she is amazing. Anyway, um, okay, so then she kind of moves into specific experiences. So she talks about a clinic that she worked in. She talks about the kind of people that she saw there, some of the responsibilities she had. Um, let's see. And then I think this is something that I would recommend doing if you can in your personal statement. You don't have that much um, space to talk about like at a little bit more length, like specific experiences that maybe impacted you emotionally. You do in your personal statement, you have that space. So she says, like one in such instance was a little girl in the clinic. She pointed at my stethoscope and asked what it was. I explained to her that I could hear the heartbeat with it. A smile spread across her face as I positioned the stethoscope on her to hear my heartbeat. She then said, one day I will be a doctor and hear all the hearts. This experience introduced me to the many facets of medicine, including the importance of creating personal connections with patients and giving them hope. So now we're hearing a little bit more about, we heard, in the first paragraph, she wants to help address health disparities in resource limited communities. Here, she talks about like giving patients hope. That's another goal now we know, and we have a experience to connect that to. And then she talks about shadowing as well. Um, and so she kind of talks more about that here, gives a little bit of, she did some mentoring, different things that she did with that. Um, and then also like things that she admired in the physicians that she shadowed. So she talks about, I witnessed how Dr. Olad sat down and took the time to understand his patients' concerns while ensuring his commitment to their health. Just as he used his skills to treat and heal his patients, I used my knowledge and experiences to give my mentees the resources they need to be successful despite their struggles in life. So again, we're hearing another thing that not just about her experience, but about how it impacted her and how that's going to affect the type of physician that she becomes. And then lastly, this is another thing, you'll see this in my personal statement as well. But if you play an instrument, this is a great place and you are passionate about it and it's impacted you, you can talk about that in your personal statement. Um, so she talks a little bit about her experience with, sorry, our trash can's loud. Her experience playing violin, and kind of looking at the effects of art and music on individual health. And so she says, as a future physician, it is my goal to incorporate unique fields and collaborate with others to cater to each of my parents. So again, we not only hear about the experience, but connect it with how it impacted her and how it affects the kind of physician that she's going to become. And then we have the last paragraph. In my future medical career, I plan to lean on my past experiences in witnessing the health disparities we face today while utilizing my unique way of caring for a patient through critical thinking, art, and music. So that just totally summarized those 3 paragraphs that she had about experiences. I am prepared for the rigorous but rewarding path of medicine because it will fulfill my lifelong goal to care for those less fortunate, which is kind of a theme throughout all 3 of those experiences. So that's one example. And I think this is a really strong personal statement. Um, I think it is beautifully written. She's a gifted writer, obviously. Um, but this is just kind of an example, and we'll go through mine really briefly as well, just so you can see a couple different styles. Um, I would say too, your personal statement is something you can start on anytime. And it's something that you're gonna have a lot of drafts of by the end of it. So you might as well get started with drafts. Think about what experiences would you want to talk about? Think about what kind of doctor do I want to become? Do I want to be, what are things that will be important to me, do I think, in my future practice? Um, you can start on a draft now and just keep working on that. Have professors edit it, have family members edit it, get their thoughts. You could have your mentor, if you're part of the Catalyst program, look at it and give you their thoughts as well. But yeah, it's not too late, or it's never too early, rather, to start working on that. So I'm going to swap over to mine real quick. Um,
It's great to have a few people read over it and just offer some feedback too, because we all miss typos and some people might read it a little
Absolutely.
differently than you intended. Maybe they don't pick up on the joke that you thought was funny in there, so maybe you need to reword it.
You know what? Okay, this is gonna just 1 second. Gonna have to open this one more way. Open with, let's try this. Okay, we'll give this a shot. Share screen. Okay, there we go. All right, so this is my personal statement. Um, And I kind of did mine themed around, I started with the idea of like playing the piano and how different traits that I learned throughout my experience playing the piano affected the type of physician that I was going to become. I kind of tied that into experiences along the way. So I talked about my hook was kind of talking about playing a Bach fugue, what that sounds like, what that feels like. Um, and then I say here, thinking over my piano experience, I have noticed that many of the things that I love about piano are exactly the things that will equip me to serve my patients well. My strong habit of discipline, desire for continual learning, and ability to problem solve are all major factors in this. So this is kind of like the thesis statement that they talk about when you're writing an essay. Um, so then I go through and I kind of have a paragraph for each of those different traits. So the first one was discipline, and I talked not just about how I learned that from playing the piano. But I said, like, obviously, I learned it from the piano, but also I talked about running and how I learned discipline through being a part of the cross country and track teams. The next one was, oh, sorry. And then the next paragraph is connecting that to how that will make me a better physician. So personally, I talked about not just being disciplined for the sake of improving yourself, but being disciplined for the sake of impacting others.
Mhm.
And how I think that makes me a good candidate for medical school and it'll make me a good doctor. Okay, then the second one was that I really like continual learning. So once again, talked about not just as a musician, but also um, as like just other areas of my life. I talked about other things that like I love piano, reading, different parts of engineering, et cetera, et cetera. So then once again talked about as a physician, I'll continue to pursue new knowledge throughout my career with the aim of providing the best possible care to my patients. So once again, just making that connection. And then creative problem solving, which had to do with my engineering undergrad. Um, so talked about playing the piano as kind of creative problem solving, and then other aspects of my life. And then this will be a valuable asset throughout medical career since physicians follow almost the same process, but I instead identify and work to resolve physical ailments rather than fixing electrical circuits. Um, and then in my summary paragraph, I kind of went back to and not mirrored, but I like completed this first experience like finishing as I play my way through the piece. My mind returns to the fugue as I realize blah 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 is approaching its conclusion, excuse me. And then I kind of have that repeating of my thesis statement. I am proud of my work, but also proud of all that piano has helped me to learn, discipline, love of continual learning, and creative problem solving. Have all helped me as a physician, and I look forward to reflecting on how they've helped me serve my patients. or as a musician, I look forward to reflecting on how they've helped me as a physician. So that's just two different styles of personal statements. You don't have to pick to do something similar to either of these. You can change it and make it your own. But the main things are that you want to connect experiences with how it will make you a better physician, how it will, why it makes you want to be a physician, one, and how, what kind of physician will it make you, basically. Um,
I like the piano analogy. That's really good.
it's making me realize I should sit down and play after this. I haven't
Yeah.
practiced in a second. So we'll go back to this one. Okay. Um, you know what, actually, I need to go back to the full screen. There we go. Oh, one second. There we are. Okay. No.
Oh no.
Okay. It's being a little tricky, but we'll try this. Okay.
Okay.
So we're gonna just go through some FAQs real quick here. So there we are. Letters of recommendation, how many do you need to be preparing? Usually it's between 3 to 5 letters, depending on each school's requirements. So that's something that you may want to look into and see, your top medical schools, how many letters do they require? Some require letters from a like pre-med committee. So you'd kind of want to check and make sure that you're on track to get one of those from your undergrad. Once again, start early on that. Sometimes professors are swamped and those can take a while, especially if it's multiple people writing the letter. Um, can I submit letters after I apply? You can, and they can forward it, but it would probably be best to go ahead and have those done if you can before you turn your application in. And then a couple of just like timing deadline questions. What is verification? Yes. So this is something that I don't know that much about, but it's basically where the AMCAS, like I was talking about before, you put in all of your information about all of your courses that you've taken in undergrad. And well, not all of them, I don't think. I think it's just the prerequisites, but it's a lot of courses. So you put in all that information and then AMCAS goes through and compares what you entered with your official transcripts that you also submit, just to make sure that that all adds up and you didn't accidentally forget something or, once again, if someone was dishonest about it, that's when they would catch it. That can take a while. So
Yeah.
just be prepared, for that to take a couple weeks.
Why they make us enter everything manually by hand and an official transcript, we will never
Who could
know,
say?
but that is how it is. So be careful, go through those things before you submit. I know I found a few typos in
Oh,
my
I found so
application,
many in mine.
so
Yeah.
just be super careful and diligent and have the right transcript out. Just double check everything.
And the good news is you do not have to do that when you're applying for residency. So
Yeah.
you have to go through that when you're applying for medical school. And then hopefully that's the last that you have to think about course numbers. Um, okay, this is a good one. How late can I submit my AMCAS application? So there are different deadlines based on the schools that you're applying to, and you should for sure look into those. But a lot of programs do rolling admissions, which means that usually you submit your AMCAS application, your primary application, then you get your secondary applications. Those are school specific. You fill those out, you get an interview invite, you interview. And then a lot of times, like if they like you based on the interview and they want to admit you, they'll just go ahead and admit you, a couple weeks down the line from that or a month down the line from that, whenever. Which means that it is kind of first come, first serve in some ways. So if you're going to be a strong applicant, you want to be on the front end of applications, which is why we're talking about, the sooner you can get those submitted, the better. They may not be, some people look at it and go, well, it doesn't close until whatever, September. You do not want to be someone who's turning in their application on the late side at all. You want to be way on the front end. Um, so yes, I think those are the main FAQs we were going to go over. But now I will stop sharing and we can answer any questions that you guys have. You can put them in the chat or you can just ask them if you would like. Oh,
Oh,
okay. This
good.
is a good one. So experiences section, do you need to use all 15 slots? Do you want to talk a little bit about that,
Yeah,
Kirsten?
so the short answer is no, you do not have to use all 15 slots. I do believe that medical school application or admission committees are significantly more concerned with the quality of your experiences than the quantity. And that is just generally true across the board because, if you think about it, in real life, people who practice medicine or work in any sort of a professional environment really probably only have time for like maybe a couple things, outside of, work. And you guys are students first and foremost, and that is the most important thing. But I would say over the course of your 4 years of undergrad, and again, like Molly said, maybe including one really impactful experience from high school, you should accumulate several experiences to talk about. I would not say that more is necessarily better. I would say you don't have to do all 15. I would say you would probably want to shoot for at least 10 of those. I would guess 10 to
At
12.
least. And
Yeah.
I would say I would probably shoot to fill out all 15. This is an area that you
Mhm.
really, really get to highlight yourself as an individual, not just as someone who, can correctly type course numbers.
Yeah.
Not to keep going back to the course numbers. I guess I was
No.
extra salty that we had to do that. Um, Anyway, but I would say, if you're thinking about it early on and you've kind of kept that running list, I bet you'll be able to come up with 15 experiences. Like I said, I like split up all my shadowing ones. Some of them were just
Hmm.
a day of shadowing, but it was impactful, so I put it on there. Um, and I didn't just do like shadowing as one experience. Same with like different parts for me of like running cross country. There were different aspects of it. So I put like the one of like the academic awards I talked about, one of the
Yeah.
conference awards, different things like that, because I thought they all highlighted different things. So you can
Yeah.
kind of break things up a little bit too.
I forgot, do awards count as an experience?
I don't think they count as an experience
Okay, I couldn't
that I
remember.
recall.
I will say, yeah, it's over the course of a few years, you should be able to have plenty of experiences that you choose from. I do know some students who had several interviews and acceptances to medical schools, and I think they had like about 13, 14. So you don't want to be shooting for like only five or six, but some experiences might really be more time consuming than others. But again, it's also okay to include some of those experiences that maybe were a one-time instance, and that can
Mhm.
help you get closer to that number.
For sure.
It's important to think about what you write about that experience too. It's not, something that's just generic, like, oh, like, you know, did XYZ. You really want to make sure you put a reason about how it impacted you.
Make it unique for sure. Will we be able to get access to this presentation to refer to later? Lindsay, is that a you question? I saw you asked about recording. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So yes on that. Ooh, this is a good one. So
Mhm.
asking about is a hospital considered clinical or volunteer? So to a certain extent, you get to decide that.
Mhm.
So I believe you, and I might be, no, I'm not confusing it with the residency application. It's like this on AMCAS. You get to pick what category things fit into. And so if you were volunteering, let's say at like an information desk, you'd probably put that as more like volunteering experience or something like that. But if you did more like my emergency department volunteering, I think I put that as like clinical because it was very much interacting with patients, interacting um, with their families, interacting with the nurses and doctors and techs. Um, so yeah, and I think it also depends like what you want to um, talk about and how you describe the experience. If you're mostly talking about like clinical interactions, then put it clinical. If you're talking more about maybe like I don't know, more like the volunteering outreach kind of side of things, maybe put it volunteering. But it kind of depends what spin you put on it, and where it is in the hospital. Um, Time limit for pre-med committee letters based on where you graduated.
I don't
That's a
know.
good
It's a
question.
great question. I don't necessarily think so. Like, for example, I applied to medical school 2 years after I graduated. I was pre-med whenever I graduated, but I actually had to reach out like later to ask specific professors to be letters or to be letter writers. But you definitely want to talk to your institution about this ASAP.
Yeah. Do you remember who you had write your personal letters of recommendation or your letters of recommendation?
Yes, I had a microbiology professor that I had a few courses with because I went to a smaller university. So she was like my introductory biology professor, a research professor, and a micro professor. And then also she was kind of like a personal mentor. I had a philosophy professor and I had my organic chemistry professor. I think that was it. There might have been one other from like a job. I think that was it though. Yeah.
Nice.
Maybe. What about you?
Okay, so I had a committee letter
Yeah,
for my
I
pre-med committee,
also had a committee.
and then
Yeah.
I had my coach write one, and I had my department head, excuse me, because I was not a typical pre-med made I wasn't like biochem or in the science department. I was engineering, so I had my head of the engineering department who knew me pretty well, wrote one. You just want to make sure that it's people who know you well. If it's a question of someone with like a really hefty title versus someone who also has the credentials to write a letter but maybe doesn't know you as well, I would go for the person who knows you better. Um, you don't want it to look like just a form letter for sure. Okay.
I have heard different things about personal statements. I've heard it's good to start with a hook, but so someone showed someone a career coach a personal statement and recommended not necessarily doing something so cliche. Well, I think that, a hook is unique to you and your story. So, don't borrow a hook from somebody else or something that, you find online. But if something truly happened, I mean, I think I would use it and to start out with something that is going to catch the audience's attention. And remember that there's the hook, but then there's everything that follows. But I mean, that's an effective writing technique. And I mean, I essentially used that, I think, in mine. And again, it was an experience that was personal to me. And I didn't try to make it sound like it was more than it was, but it was definitely something personal.
Yeah, I think it's pretty dependent probably individually there. It might be okay to be a little bit, I don't want to say cliche, because I agree. You don't want to I mean, there are certain words that are kind of just going to be buzzwords in a personal statement, like impact and, like blah, 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 as a future physician, that kind of, you're just going to get a lot of those phrases in a personal statement because that's
Yeah,
what it's about. But
yeah.
yeah. Feel like probably where being cliche would come into things would be if you were talking a little bit too generally, maybe, then I would say avoid that. Make sure you're personalizing things really well. But if you're part of the mentorship program, like I said, a great starting point could be sending your personal statement or current draft. It could be a really rough draft. We don't care. To your mentor, and they, I'm sure, would be happy to look over it. All of us medical students remember what it's like to be applying to medical school and stressing about the personal statement and not knowing, remembering like, which experiences may be impactful or not, that kind of thing. And we're all really happy to kind of help you along that
Right.
journey too. So, any other questions we can answer?
Definitely good luck to all of you. Be yourselves. Keep working hard. Don't look to the left or to the right. Look straight ahead and listen to people that you know you can trust in terms of, what your desires are for the future and, why you're motivated for medicine and keep talking to people and looking for resources.
Yes, genuinely, we wish you the best. I think all of the Catalyst mentors wish you the best. If you're stressed, know that other people probably are too applying. You're not the only one. And y'all will do great. Anything else, Lindsay, that we need to add on before we say goodbye?
I just want to kind of plug our pre-med day. I hope all of you signed up for that. That's coming up this
Yes.
Saturday, and we're putting the finishing touches on that word.
Yeah,
Yes. And you can think that email that went out to sign up if you have any questions about pre-med day, you can respond to that and we can get you answers. So, are we able, Lindsay, do you know, are we able to apply for a Catalyst mentor currently?
It is closed for this season, unfortunately, but it's kind of early in the time too, so we may be able to get you guys plugged in if we can find a mentor that's willing to take more than one mentee for sure.
Hmm. Which we've had that in the past too. So we can, um, Lindsay should, the person who asked that maybe just reply to the email that was about the Zoom from Danielle and we could try and get connected.
For sure.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. We're excited for you guys and enjoy the rest of your evening.
See ya, guys. Bye.